Welcome back to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jay and Bay, the number one source for competitive Legends of Runeterra news and information. If you're looking for the best decks to play right now, be sure to check us out on Twitter at Master Runeterra or in our Discord. And if you want to take the next step in leveling up your game, check out our Runeterra team on Patreon, where we do weekly learning calls and one-on-one coaching. Now strap in and grab yourself some Poro snacks, because we are about to start Mastering Runeterra.
Welcome back to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jay, Bay, and special guest Steve Rubin on loan from Riot Games, here to talk to us about maybe not everything competitive, but a lot of things competitive. Before we jump into that, though, we have to thank all of our subscribers and all of our patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. Let's just do awesome stuff like this, like bring you podcasts with members of Riot. Steve, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me back. It's been a while.
Yeah, right. Do you guys remember how long it's been? It's been about a year, I want to say.
I think it's been pretty close to a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, my hair was longer.
That's right.
That's all I remember. That's how I tell time during COVID, was how long my hair was, and now that it's gone, I'm like, oh, I don't know when that happened.
You just look at pictures like that was May, I'm pretty sure, lengthwise.
That was this long ago. Yeah.
For anyone who maybe doesn't know who you are, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself? I could do it, but I don't want to do it not justice. And also, I'm curious, because I know your role has changed in this last year. I'm curious, where it's at and stuff now.
Yeah, so I am a game designer on Legends of Runeterra. I guess I forgot my name. Maybe it's early. I'm Steve Rubin, and a lot of people know me as Rubinzoo. And I'm a game designer on Legends of Runeterra. So game designers on Legends of Runeterra primarily are working on cards. So I do work on expansions as well as balance patches. So anything from fixing bugs on your cards to designing new champions and creating new archetypes and mechanics and coding them all into the game. That's kind of what game designers do on Legends of Runeterra, the card designers. I do work on that, but I also am now sort of the lead on tournaments. So in addition to the normal card stuff, I am sort of responsible for outlining a new system for competitive play. And that's been something that I sort of started working on in the second half of last year. It used to be Riot Cotton Candy, and he did a great job with all the seasonal tournaments and making worlds happen from nothing. So definitely props to him. And yeah, I'm kind of moving over, and I'd love today to talk a little bit about some of the transitions we're doing this year. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I think that some of this stuff it's really exciting for me, because a lot of this stuff we work way ahead of time, and seeing players leave all this feedback, and it's like, oh, how are we going to address it? So yeah, that's what I've been working on now, and hopefully I can share some with that today.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I mean, we've been trying to have a competitive conversation for a really long time. It's kind of our bread and butter. Now, would you say you have competitive card game experience, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I've been rank 1 on the ladder a few times in lore. But yeah, no, I think I used to be a professional Magic the Gathering player, traveled the world. I hit Platinum, which is the sort of the highest pro level in Magic, for 3 years in a row. And I went to the World Championships twice. So it was definitely, that time was super exciting for me. And as a player and now a dev, I love to sort of take that, take what I learned there and kind of put a lens through, like, what kind of competitive system would I be interested in? Since that was sort of how I ended up in this role in the card game industry, is from my roots in Magic. So it's always good to sort of, use that past experience, but at the same time, there's a lot of unique things to lore that we need to consider, and that's been really one of the most difficult things is what is necessarily the best for the upper echelon type players that I call them, and the system that we're actually moving towards is sort of both trying to attack two problems. One is like, how do we better serve our upper echelon players, like Jason, players like Majin, players like Alan, people who are really into the competitive system. But at the same time, how do we actually get more players? And I'm calling this kind of like going wide. We're like, oh, how do we get more players involved in tournaments? And those two things are often sort of like at odds with each other, but hopefully we can attack those this year.
Yeah, and just to clarify for people, because I know sometimes there's some confusion around what we're talking about when we're talking about tournaments or organized play. Can you kind of list it from like maybe sort of like the bottom to the top of the things? Because you're not just in tournaments, right? You're also doing like gauntlets, for instance. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, can you like give the so we're talking about tournaments, it's not just like seasonals, right? It's the whole like ecosystem of sort of competitive also is another word that gets thrown around that we use, but is a little confusing at times. So you want me to break that down a little bit for our listeners?
Yeah, so I think where it starts is at the base level where like anybody can go into the game and play the ranked ladder. That is sort of like the baseline for PvP in Legends of Runeterra. But that definitely doesn't always necessarily lead to sort of sorry, I kind of caught myself there. But the ladder is sort of like the baseline play, but then organized play or competitive, some people call it, is really that next step of like, hey, what if I want to take Legends of Runeterra or any game for that matter a bit more seriously than just like playing on the ladder? And for that means usually for card games is tournaments. Like, how do I test my skills? How do I prove myself as a player? How do I go in there and earn rewards? Like what's the difference between a game that I just kind of play for fun on the ladder and one that I play competitively? Like, what are my sort of like big long-term motives for playing the game? And that's sort of what I work on with tournaments. And you're totally right, Jason, that it's not really just tournaments. It's almost like at Riot we would call it like metagame systems. Like, what are the things that motivate players to play other than just the game itself? Because a lot of the times, and for lore for many years, that's kind of what carried us, was the core gameplay. But now, baseline, talking about gauntlets and tournaments, we want to find out ways to, both give players, let players experience variety. Like, I think a lot of players have been playing like the standard war ranked ladder for a long time. And the other one is almost like a competitive feel. Like right now we have the seasonal tournaments, but those only happen, every 2 or 3 months, right? And I think having more bite-sized ways to have that competitive feeling and to have the sort of like, oh, I'm playing for something more than just the number of my ladder rank is going to be really important to get players keep playing. So I think organized play, and this is like a really complicated answer to Jason's question, is really just anything that gets players like playing the game, which sounds silly because it's like, oh, it's a game, like you play for fun. But I think all of us know like strategy games are really about that idea. At least for me, I'm kind of personally, I never said that I was like addicted to Magic, but I was addicted to getting better at Magic. Like the idea that I am like progressing just by becoming smarter was always something that was super exciting. But if you don't have ways to test your skill against other players, really, you don't get that feeling of like, oh yeah, I'm getting better. So that's kind of where we're at.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe, and this is probably a good segue. But yeah, for me, it's, you really kind of hit the nail on the head here, because since Worlds, I haven't really played a lot of Runeterra. I love the game. I absolutely love it. I'd be happy to play it all day, every day if I, was so incentivized to, kind of thing. And yeah, it's just, I like to play because I like to, like you say, challenge myself. And so I want to play against the other best players, and I want them to be on their best game, and then I want to beat them on that day. And like, feel like I accomplished that thing. I put the work in, and I was the best on that day. And that's why I love playing. And yeah, when we don't have that system, for players like myself at least to like come together and actually make it matter and know that someone's trying on the other end and make it feel like you earned it. Yeah, the ladder's not quite cutting it. So so this is probably a good like I was saying, a good segue though, for why don't you tell us, what sort of you've been working on or what you've been digging into. And you mentioned about how things are very different for Legends of Runeterra compared to other games because it is so unique. There's no paper game tied to it. The game is extremely accessible. There's not like a very big, paywall or anything. You don't have to buy boosters. And so I got to imagine those things probably factor in quite a bit when you're trying to figure out how to make a system work, with the prizes and everything. So yeah, what are you taking away for a little bit? Tell us, a little bit about, what you're here to sort of lay on us with, what we can be expecting.
Yeah, so in 2023, it's going to be definitely a year of like experimentation and transition in terms of what we can do competitively. Starting off, we do still have the World Ender Seasonal, and I'm happy to announce that part of this year is actually going to be simplifying the paths to Worlds. So instead of having seasonal points and ranked points and top fours, we're just going to have points and we're just going to have direct invites. And in the World Ender Seasonal, the winners from each shard will qualify directly into the World Final. So yeah, it's going to be kind of really spicy tournament because that's a lot on the line right away. Beyond that, in terms of what we're doing the rest of this year, is kind of setting up that system so that it can, have our paths to Worlds. So basically what we're going to start to do is we're just going to transition into a new tournament system. And the main things that we're doing to change are going to be, things that we heard from players, like wanting to just be able to have more opportunities to play competitive.
So, okay. So to start off, you're saying there's going to be a bit of a beta. Is that why it's not going to be a 2-day event starting off?
So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that. So what we're doing is we are launching the beta season directly after the World Ender Seasonal Tournament. So the World Ender Seasonal Tournament got kind of, we moved it up because we think that the best choice here is to sort of get did the hot fix, have sort of a patch for the 6E World Ender Tournament. That, of course, again, just to reiterate, it's going to have direct qualifications to the World Final, not Worlds, not World Qualifiers, but the World Final, which, maybe we can talk about that on another podcast, what that might look like. So definitely get ready for that. And then we're going to transition into a beta season. So starting in February, there's going to be daily rumbles and Runeterra opens. And what that'll do is there'll be a completely new reward track. Definitely check that out. Really important here is like getting y'all feedback. Like, it's a beta. We're going to figure out what formats players like. We want to figure out, hey, are the timing windows right? Like, is this too many games? How does the reward track feel?
And also, Ruben, you want to tell people maybe the best ways that they can sort of start giving feedback to the team?
Yeah, it's actually a good question. I mean, I think we, not to sound creepy, but I feel like we're always listening. Like on socials, on Reddit, in our official Discord is another place. We always have our eye out. But yeah, I think if you want to reach out, I don't know, maybe we can set something up where we get some more direct feedback like we did at the end of last year. But in terms of yet, I would just say try to jump into the beta season and see what formats you like, what you don't like, how the progression feels, everything like that. How do the point systems feel? That will all be really helpful for us when we eventually roll out the full system. If you have any original thoughts, like obviously people, I might not always respond, but you can hit me up on Twitter at Rubinzoo. More or less, it'll get seen. It might not always get responded to, but I'll definitely check that out.
Okay, great.
I as a last kind of comment, I myself being obviously a more competitively focused player, I think most people listening are probably as well. So we tend to focus on the bigger tournaments. I think the daily gauntlets, having more casual players, giving them a reason to log in and play every day and stuff, like they, to fill that rewards track, it's like, oh, it's this gauntlet today. Like, I'm going to see what's up with that. I think that's actually going to be a really big deal. I think that would be really good for the player base that maybe they log in once a week, they try stuff. I think it'll be a big incentivizer for a lot of people.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sorry, I'm gonna cut you off. You want to?
No, I mean, I'm excited about it too. We did some experiments with the Xbox Pass last year, like trying to do Time Winder gauntlets and stuff like that, just to see. I think that, those were kind of exciting because they were fresh, but weren't necessarily all the way there because there was no system behind them outside of the current system of getting prime glories, which, like I think we talked about before, I think that it's a really good system for the players that utilize it and play in the Last Chance Gauntlet, but I feel like that's a small amount of players. So hopefully it with the new rewards and everything, it opens it up.
Yeah, great. I'm sure, everyone's going to have a lot of questions about how this stuff works. And I don't know how much you're able to commit to, but are you able to give a timeline of when, the announcement will come out and more information will be available to players?
Yeah, so our next patch is on February 1st. And that will be a balance patch. So you'll see changes that we're working on now. And with that, we will also probably have comms around the beta season of tournament seasons. It's a lot of seasons, but yeah. So definitely sit tight. We'll have some more official comms around the end of January. Hopefully that's not too specific and I get yelled at. I think that's probably what it's going to be because that's when the patch is coming down.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and you go.
Can I say one more thing? So that will be just for the beta season. In terms of like qualifying for worlds and stuff like that, there's almost two different things. There's like the beta season and tournament season, and then there's like competitive organized play. Exactly, I've outlined kind of what the system looks like now, but the X's and O's and the amounts probably won't be out until the end of the beta season or before, like right before the end. So players, once you need to know, you'll know. But for now, we're just focusing on the kind of stepping stones going from current seasonals to the beta season and then to our first big release later this year.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. Even just knowing that, all this stuff is being worked on and that it is coming and it will be rolled out, I think goes a long way. I know sometimes with comms itself, there's a bit of a disconnect and, players don't really understand what was going on or what was coming. So I think, this is great. We thank you so much for coming on the podcast and everyone else at Riot that, is helping us sort of bridge that gap. And super excited. Honestly, can't wait.
Nice.
Wish it was the end of the month already because I want to see all the new stuff. I want to hear about it. I want to start trying it out.
Yeah.
I want to go.
I want to see I want to see everything. I want to see all of it. But I think that's all we got for you guys today. Thank you for everyone for listening. Thank you again, Rubin, for being on the podcast. Hope to have you on again sometime soon. And I think that's it. Bae, you got any last words? Okay, We'll say goodbye.